The champagne glass slipped from my hand the exact second Daniel tapped his fork against his crystal flute. The ballroom at the Ridgewell Grand Hotel glittered with gold banners that read, "Congratulations, Daniel Hart, Senior Vice President." I had helped design those banners. I had approved the catering menu. I had personally wired the deposit that secured this very room. The entire executive board of Stratford & Cole Enterprises stood in a semicircle, smiling at my husband. Daniel raised his glass, but his eyes never met mine. Instead, he reached inside his tailored jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. "I couldn't have done this without clarity," he said smoothly to the crowd. "And tonight, I'm choosing to move forward, alone." He walked across the marble floor while cameras flashed. He placed the envelope directly into my trembling hands. I opened it slowly. Divorce papers. At his promotion party. In front of everyone who mattered in his career. A slow murmur spread through the executives. Someone laughed awkwardly, thinking it was a joke. Daniel leaned close enough for me to smell the expensive cologne I'd bought him last month. "You'll land on your feet, Catherine," he whispered. "You always do." I looked up at him calmly. "Are you sure you want to do this tonight?" He smirked. "It's already done. My name is Catherine Hayes. I am 47 years old. And until this moment, I had spent 12 years building my husband's career while putting my own life on hold." The board gave an awkward applause. They called it Daniel's bold new chapter. I watched their faces carefully. Several executives glanced at me, not with pity but with confusion. They remembered something. Last year's acquisition meeting. The consulting work I'd done behind the scenes. The financial restructuring that saved the merger. Daniel's assistant stood near the dessert table, avoiding my eyes completely. That told me something too. She knew. They all knew this was planned. When I stepped outside into the cool evening air, my phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out and checked the notification. A transfer request had been initiated from our joint holding company. $50,000. Moving to an account I didn't recognize. He was already moving money. He'd planned this down to the minute. Divorce papers at the party. Money transfers before I could react. He thought he'd covered everything. I looked back through the glass doors at Daniel, laughing with the board members, celebrating his promotion and his freedom. He thought I was the emotional wife. The supportive background character. The woman who signed checks without reading the fine print. He had no idea what he'd just triggered. In my car I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my private banking app instead. The account Daniel thought was our family savings cushion appeared on my screen. He tried to access it twice in the past week. Both attempts had been declined. That account wasn't family money. It was tied to a trust structure my father had helped me set up years ago. Daniel had never bothered to understand it. He just knew money appeared when we needed it. I scrolled through the account details. Everything was still locked under my control. Daniel's name appeared nowhere on the paperwork. He could file for divorce. He could humiliate me publicly. But legally? He just triggered something he didn't understand. The trust had a clause. A very specific clause about asset protection during legal proceedings. My attorney had insisted on it when I'd first married Daniel. I thought it was excessive then. Now I smiled quietly in the darkness of my car. Daniel had served papers. But in doing so, he'd activated automatic freezes on several accounts he thought were joint. He just didn't know it yet. I started the car and drove home. Tomorrow morning I'd make some calls. Tonight I'd let him celebrate. That night I couldn't sleep. Not from sadness but from clarity. I sat in our home office and opened the tablet synced to our shared cloud storage. Daniel never locked his files. He never thought I'd look. I was wrong about that too. Messages appeared first. 6 months of conversations. Then photos. Hotel receipts. Weekend trips he'd claimed were client meetings. And her face. A junior PR executive at Stratford & Cole. Young. Ambitious. Impressed by his title. I scrolled further. He'd promised her things. My house. My car. A future he claimed was already his to give. In one message he wrote, "After the promotion party everything changes. She'll be out of the picture, and we can finally be public." I sat very still reading every word. Then I began taking screenshots. Every message. Every photo. Every receipt. I organized them by date in a folder I titled Evidence. By sunrise, I had everything documented, and I'd already forwarded copies to my attorney with a single message. We need to meet today. Daniel came home at 3 in the morning, smelling like champagne and perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. My attorney went completely silent when I showed her the financial documents. Her name was Francesca, and she'd handled my father's estate. She knew money. She knew contracts. And she knew when someone had made a critical mistake. Did Daniel read the shareholder agreements before filing? She asked carefully, spreading the papers across her desk. I shook my head. He never reads anything. He just signs where I tell him to sign. Francesca pressed her lips together. For a moment I thought she was angry. Then I realized she was trying not to laugh. Good, she said finally. Let's not warn him. She explained what I'd suspected. The holding company Daniel thought was ours wasn't joint at all. My name was listed as primary owner. His signature appeared as a secondary beneficiary, contingent on marriage status. The divorce filing changed everything. Automatically, the legal structure I built years ago was designed exactly for this moment. He's going to be very surprised, Francesca said. When does he think he's taking control of the assets? He already tried. Last night, right after he handed me the papers. And the transfer failed. He probably thinks it's a technical error. Francesca smiled. Let him keep thinking that. 3 years ago, Stratford & Cole Enterprises was dying. A failed expansion into overseas markets had drained their capital. The board was panicking. Daniel came home every night talking about layoffs and bankruptcy. That's when I stepped in. Not as Daniel's wife. As an investor. Through my trust structure, I injected $2.3 million into the company. The agreement was carefully worded. Convertible equity if certain benchmarks were met. Revenue targets. Profit margins. Market stability. Daniel knew about the investment. He thought it was family money helping his company. He never read the actual contract. He never understood what convertible equity meant. Last quarter, Stratford & Cole hit every single benchmark. Revenue up. Profits up. Stock price climbing. The board announced Daniel's promotion to senior vice president as a reward for the company's success. What Daniel didn't know was that hitting those benchmarks activated my conversion option. The money I'd invested 3 years ago could now be converted into voting shares. Majority voting shares. The promotion he was celebrating had just made me the largest shareholder in his company, and he had no idea. I sat in Francesca's office, watching her calculate the numbers. You own them, she said simply. You own more of that company than anyone else. The morning after the party, I sent a carefully worded email to 2 board members. Not the ones who liked Daniel. The ones who'd originally opposed his promotion. Mr. Harrison and Ms. Price had both questioned whether Daniel had the financial backing to handle a senior executive role. They'd been overruled by the chairman, who trusted Daniel's promises about family investments. I invited them to breakfast. Private. Urgent. Business matter requiring discretion. They arrived at the restaurant looking concerned. I'd chosen a quiet place far from the office. No witnesses. No recording. I slid the paperwork across the table. Copies of my original investment agreement. Copies of the conversion documents. Proof that I, not Daniel, held the financial power at Stratford & Cole. Mr. Harrison read in silence. His coffee grew cold. Miss Price looked up at me twice, then went back to reading. Finally, Mr. Harrison spoke. Does Daniel know about this? He knows I made an investment years ago. He doesn't know the terms. Miss Price set down the papers carefully. You're the mystery investor we've been trying to identify. I nodded. I preferred to stay quiet. Until now. The silence at that table was louder than any applause from last night's party. Francesca called me that afternoon. Her voice was excited in a way lawyers rarely sound. I found something in the shareholder agreement. A morality clause. I sat up straighter. Explain. Any executive engaging in a relationship with a subordinate employee creates reputational liability for the company. If such a relationship is proven, the board has grounds to suspend voting rights pending investigation. I thought about the screenshots on my phone. The junior PR executive. The 6 months of messages. The promises he'd made her. Does divorce trigger the investigation? I asked. Not automatically. Someone would need to file a formal complaint with documentation. But I could file that complaint. Yes. And given your new position as major shareholder, the board would have to take it seriously. I didn't file immediately. Not yet. Instead, I had Francesca draft the notice. We dated it. We prepared every document. But we held it back. I wanted Daniel to feel safe first. I wanted him to think he'd gotten away with everything. People make more mistakes when they think they've already won. Daniel tried to move more funds from the holding company that weekend. I got the notification on my phone. Another 50,000. Then 20,000 more. He was draining what he thought were our joint accounts. Every transfer failed. Assets temporarily frozen pending ownership clarification. That's what the automated message said. I programmed it myself through my attorney. My phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, then declined the call. He called again immediately. I declined again. He sent a text. Something's wrong with the accounts. Call me. I didn't respond. Let him panic. Let him wonder why his access had suddenly disappeared. Let him try to fix it alone. That evening he came home angry. Why aren't you answering your phone? I looked up from my book calmly. I've been home all day. Why didn't you just come talk to me? The accounts are frozen. Our money is frozen. Did you do something? I didn't do anything. Maybe the divorce filing triggered some automatic security measures. He stared at me. That's not how it works. I shrugged. I wouldn't know. You're the one who filed. He left the room, already dialing his attorney. I went back to my book, listening to his frustrated voice through the walls. Monday morning, Daniel posted on LinkedIn. I saw it while drinking coffee at my kitchen table. His smiling face filled my phone screen. Sometimes success requires difficult personal decisions, he'd written. Excited to begin this new chapter both professionally and personally. Grateful for those who supported me, and ready to move forward with clarity and purpose. The comments rolled in. Congratulations. So brave. Inspiring leadership. People who didn't know what those words really meant. Then I noticed something. One board member, Mr. Harrison, had commented publicly, "Congratulations, Daniel. We're especially grateful to the early private investor who made this growth possible. None of this would exist without that financial foundation." My phone buzzed. Daniel texting. "What did you tell them?" I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the comments continue. People asking questions. Who was the early investor? Was it family money? Someone mentioned Daniel's wife worked in finance. Dots were being connected publicly. Daniel called me 3 times. I let every call go to voicemail. By noon, he deleted the entire post. But screenshots lived forever. I'd already saved copies. Tuesday morning, Stratford & Cole announced a new promotion. The junior PR executive, the woman from Daniel's messages, was suddenly director of communications. Immediate promotion. Significant salary increase. Reporting directly to Daniel. The internal company message board exploded. I still had access through an old consultant login. Employees were furious. She'd been there less than 2 years. Other candidates with more experience had been passed over. Anonymous HR complaints started appearing. Someone leaked the promotion timeline. It overlapped perfectly with the timeline of Daniel's divorce filing. The connection was obvious. By Wednesday, 3 senior employees had submitted formal complaints about favoritism. By Thursday, the company's internal investigation team had been activated. Daniel's carefully planned new beginning was unraveling. And the woman he'd promised everything to was suddenly the center of a workplace scandal. I received a call from Ms. Price that afternoon. "Did you see the internal complaints?" I saw them. "The board is concerned. This is making the company look unstable. We need to address it formally. What do you need from me?" A pause. "Your perspective. As an investor. We'd like you at the next board meeting." I smiled quietly. "I'd be happy to attend." The board meeting invitation arrived via email. Formal. Official. I was listed on the agenda not as Daniel's wife, but as major equity stakeholder. Daniel called me immediately. Why are you invited to the board meeting? I'm an investor. They want my perspective. Since when are you an investor? Since 3 years ago, when I saved the company with $2.3 million. Silence. Then. That was family money. That was our money. No, Daniel. It was my trust fund. My investment. My equity. You never bothered to read the paperwork. You can't just. I already did. See you Thursday. I hung up before he could respond. Thursday arrived. I dressed carefully. Professional. Powerful. I walked into that boardroom like I owned it. Because legally I almost did. Daniel sat at the table, his face pale. When I took my seat, I was positioned across from him. Equal. The board members nodded at me respectfully. The chairman opened the meeting. We've called this session to clarify ownership structures and address recent concerns about executive conduct. Daniel's hands gripped the table edge. He finally understood. This wasn't about the divorce. This was about power. And he just realized who actually held it. The chairman turned to me. Ms. Hayes, would you like to explain your investment position for the record? I pulled out the documents Francesca had prepared. Clean. Organized. Undeniable. 3 years ago, Stratford & Cole faced bankruptcy. I invested $2.3 million through my private trust. The agreement included convertible equity tied to performance benchmarks. I slid copies across the table. Every board member received one. Last quarter, every benchmark was met. Revenue, profit, market position. As per the original contract, I exercised my conversion option 2 weeks ago. Mr. Harrison studied the papers. And your current share percentage? 43%. Majority control. Daniel stood up suddenly. This is insane. That money was mine, I interrupted calmly. The trust is in my name. Always has been. You signed the investment documents as my spouse, but you never held ownership. It's all documented. The chairman looked at Daniel. Did you read these documents before signing? Daniel sat back down slowly. I thought it was a formality. It wasn't a formality. It was a legally binding investment agreement. One that Ms. Hayes has now rightfully exercised. Ms. Price spoke up. Which means Ms. Hayes is now our largest single shareholder. I nodded. Correct. The room fell completely silent. Daniel stared at the table. The power shift was complete. And everyone in that room knew it. After the board meeting, I scheduled a private session with Francesca. It was time to submit the evidence. She prepared the formal complaint. Documented proof of Daniel's relationship with a subordinate employee. Screenshots of messages. Photos. Hotel receipts. A timeline showing how the relationship coincided with her sudden promotion. The morality clause was clear. Any executive engaging in such relationships created reputational liability. The board had to investigate. I submitted the complaint Thursday evening. By Friday morning, Daniel received notice. His executive privileges were temporarily suspended pending investigation. He couldn't approve budgets. Couldn't sign contracts. Couldn't make hiring decisions. The same executives who'd applauded him at the promotion party now avoided him in hallways. I heard about it through Mr. Harrison, who called to update me. Daniel's attorney is threatening legal action, he said, claiming this is personal retaliation. Is it retaliation if I'm protecting company interests as a major shareholder? According to our legal team? No. You have every right to raise concerns about executive conduct that impacts company reputation. Then let them threaten. I have documentation for everything. Daniel showed up at my house that night. Not our house anymore. My house. I'd already filed the property claim through Francesca. He pounded on the door until I answered. You're destroying me. I looked at him calmly. I'm protecting my investment. This is revenge. No, Daniel. This is consequence. Daniel pushed past me into the house. His house, he still thought. But the deed told a different story. The down payment had come from my premarital funds. The mortgage was in my name. He'd contributed to payments, but ownership was mine. We can work this out, he said, his voice desperate now. Drop the investigation. I'll drop the divorce. We can fix this. I closed the door slowly. You handed me divorce papers at your promotion party. In front of everyone. You called it moving forward with clarity. I made a mistake. You made many mistakes. The divorce was just one of them. He ran his hands through his hair. What do you want? Money. I'll give you half of everything. I don't want half of everything, Daniel. I want what's mine. Which, it turns out, is most of everything. He stared at me. You planned this. You've been planning this. No. You planned the public humiliation. I just planned for my financial security. There's a difference. I asked him one question. Just one. Did you think I was stupid or just loyal? He had no answer. He stood there, mouth opening and closing, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, he left. I locked the door behind him and returned to the documents spread across my dining table. Francesca had sent over the preliminary divorce settlement. Given the asset structure, Daniel would walk away with very little. He was starting to understand that now. The board's forensic audit began the following week. It started as routine investigation into the morality clause complaint. It became something much larger. The auditors found irregular expense patterns. Lavish client dinners at expensive restaurants. Hotel stays charged to company accounts. Weekend trips marked as business travel. Every single one matched the timeline of Daniel's affair. He'd used company money, company credit cards, company travel budgets to fund a personal relationship with a subordinate. That changed everything legally. It wasn't just a morality violation anymore. It was misuse of corporate funds. Potential fraud. Mr. Harrison called me personally. The audit results are damning. Daniel claimed business expenses for personal activities. We're talking nearly $80,000 over 6 months. What happens now? The board meets tomorrow. But between us, he's done. We can't keep an executive who's stolen from the company. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat very still, processing what this meant. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me personally. He'd betrayed the company I'd saved with my money. The irony was almost perfect. The news broke internally before Daniel could control it. His girlfriend, the PR executive, had her promotion reversed immediately. Pending investigation, the announcement said. Everyone knew what that meant. She deleted all her social media accounts within hours. LinkedIn, Instagram, everything. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots circulated. Comments about her relationship with Daniel. Speculation about how she'd really gotten promoted. Industry blogs picked up the story. Misconduct allegations rock Stratford and Cole. Executive romance scandal threatens company stability. The company's stock price dipped 3 points in one day. The board needed to act fast. They needed to show investors that leadership was stable, that the company wasn't falling apart. They called another meeting. This time, only senior board members. And me. We need your help, the chairman said directly. Investor confidence is shaking. We need someone trustworthy to step in. Someone who understands the company's financial foundation. Ms. Price added. Someone who's been invested in our success from the beginning. They were looking at me. All of them. What exactly are you asking? I said carefully. Interim strategic advisor. Publicly visible. Shows stability. Shows that our major investor still believes in the company. I thought about Daniel. About the promotion party. About standing in that ballroom while he handed me divorce papers. I'll do it, I said. But I have conditions. My conditions were simple. Full access to financial records. Direct reporting to the board. Authority to recommend leadership changes. And my role would be announced publicly. The board agreed immediately. They were desperate for stability. For someone who could calm investors and steady the company. The announcement went out Monday morning. Official press release. Stratford and Cole names major investor as interim strategic advisor. My name. My credentials. My investment history with the company. Daniel found out through a leaked internal memo. Employees saw it before executives did. By the time it reached Daniel's email, everyone already knew. He showed up at the office unannounced Tuesday morning. Demanded to see the chairman. Demanded to see me. Demanded an explanation. Security stopped him at the elevator. His access badge had been deactivated pending investigation. He couldn't enter the executive floor without escort. I watched from my new office window as security walked him out. He looked up, saw me watching, and his face went red with rage. I turned away and went back to my financial reports. The company needed attention. Daniel was no longer my concern. The divorce hearing happened 2 weeks later. Daniel's attorney had promised to fight for half of everything. Community property, shared assets, equal division. They walked into court confident. They walked out devastated. My attorney submitted 600 pages of documentation. Wire transfers from my trust to the investment account. Property deeds showing premarital ownership. Loan agreements where I'd funded Daniel's career expenses. Every single document proved the same thing. The money was mine. The investments were mine. The assets were mine. Daniel had contributed to household expenses. He'd paid some bills. But the major assets, the real wealth, all traced back to my premarital trust. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. She asked Daniel's attorney direct questions. Where did the down payment for the house come from? The plaintiff's premarital funds, Your Honor. And the investment in Stratford & Cole? The plaintiff's trust, Your Honor. The luxury vehicles? Purchased with funds from the plaintiff's accounts, Your Honor. The judge looked at Daniel. Mr. Hart, it appears your wife was the primary financial provider throughout your marriage. Daniel's attorney tried to argue earning potential. Future income. Daniel's promotion. My attorney smiled. About that promotion, Your Honor. Mr. Hart is currently suspended from his position pending investigation for financial misconduct. His future earning potential is uncertain at best. The judge raised an eyebrow. The narrative flipped completely. Daniel wasn't the successful executive. He was the dependent spouse whose wife had funded everything. 1 week later, Stratford & Cole's board made their final decision. Facing formal termination for misconduct, Daniel was given a choice: resign voluntarily or be fired with cause. He chose resignation. The press release called it pursuing new opportunities. Everyone in the industry knew what that meant. I read the announcement from the same hotel ballroom where Daniel had humiliated me. The Ridgewell Grand Hotel was hosting an investor conference. I was there as Stratford & Cole's representative, standing where Daniel had stood, representing the company he'd lost. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in that room. Several investors approached me afterward. Congratulations. Well played. One older man shook my hand and said simply, Justice. I drove home that evening thinking about how quickly everything had changed. 2 months ago, Daniel handed me divorce papers at his promotion party. Now he was unemployed, under investigation, and facing financial ruin. I hadn't destroyed him. He'd destroyed himself. I just documented it. The final divorce hearing was quick. Daniel's attorney barely argued. The evidence was overwhelming. The asset division was clear. Because the majority of wealth came from my premarital trust, Daniel received minimal settlement. No alimony. No house. No executive shares. Just his personal retirement account and half the value of his car. He signed the papers quietly this time. No cameras. No audience. Just a conference room and 2 attorneys. When it was over, I walked to my car alone. No celebration. No satisfaction. Just closure. Daniel caught up with me in the parking garage. You got what you wanted. I got what was mine, I corrected. There's a difference. Same thing. No, Daniel. You wanted my money and my silence. I kept my money and found my voice. Not the same at all. He looked older somehow. Tired. Was it worth it? Was humiliating me at your promotion party worth it? He had no answer. He walked away and I let him go. That chapter of my life was finished. The aftermath played out over the following months. Industry recruiters stopped calling Daniel once the audit findings became public record. No company wanted an executive under investigation for financial misconduct. The PR executive, his former girlfriend, filed her own complaint against him. Claimed he'd promised her career advancement in exchange for the relationship. Claimed he'd manipulated her. Whether that was true, I didn't know. I didn't care. She'd made her choices. Now she faced her consequences too. Daniel's LinkedIn profile went quiet. No new positions. No consulting work. Just silence. In our industry, silence meant unemployment. I heard through professional circles that he'd moved to another state, starting over, rebuilding. Maybe he'd learned something. Maybe he'd just find another woman to fund his next attempt. Either way, he was no longer my problem. Stratford & Cole offered me a permanent position, Vice President of Strategic Investment. Ironic title, given Daniel's old position. But this one came with real power, real authority, board seat included. I accepted. The company I'd saved 3 years ago was now officially mine to help lead. Investors responded positively to the announcement. The stock price recovered. Employee morale improved. Several employees privately thanked me. They said the company felt more stable now, more honest. One young analyst told me, "You showed us that documentation matters. That protecting yourself isn't paranoid, it's smart." I started mentoring women in the company, teaching them what I'd learned. Document your contributions. Know your worth. Never assume loyalty equals security. The company culture began to shift. More transparency. Better policies around workplace relationships. Clearer expectations for executive conduct. Daniel's scandal had created an opportunity for real change. I wasn't going to waste it. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Daniel at a networking event. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked smaller somehow. Less polished. His suit was off the rack, not tailored. His confidence was gone. He saw me across the room and froze. For a moment I thought he'd leave. Instead he walked over slowly. "Congratulations on the VP position," he said quietly. "I heard about it." "Thank you." Awkward silence. Then he said, "I didn't think you'd go this far." I looked at him steadily. "You thought I'd go quietly. I thought you'd be hurt. Emotional. I thought you'd make mistakes." I was hurt. Very hurt. But I dealt with it privately. Then I handled business professionally. He nodded slowly. "I underestimated you." "Yes. You did. Would you have done this if I hadn't humiliated you publicly?" I considered the question. "If you'd come to me privately, asked for divorce respectfully, treated me with basic human dignity, we'd probably still be divorced. But you'd have walked away with a lot more." So the public humiliation made me document everything, made me protect myself completely, made me realize I'd been too generous for too long. "You taught me to stop being nice and start being smart." He looked down. "I'm sorry. For what it's worth. It's worth acknowledging. Not worth forgiving yet. Maybe someday." He walked away. I watched him go, feeling nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just peace. 1 year after Daniel handed me divorce papers at his promotion party, Stratford & Cole posted record profits. 17% growth. New market expansion. Investor confidence at all-time high. I hosted the annual celebration at the same Ridgewell Grand Hotel ballroom. Same gold decorations. Same catering company. Same marble floors where I'd stood humiliated. But this time was different. This time when I raised my glass, the applause was for me. I looked out at the crowd. Board members. Employees. Investors. People who respected my work. People who knew my value. I didn't give a revenge speech. I didn't mention Daniel. I didn't gloat about what I'd overcome. Instead, I said just one thing. One line that carried everything I'd learned. Never mistake quiet support for weakness. Never assume kindness means stupidity. And never, ever underestimate someone just because they chose to build you up instead of themselves. The room erupted in applause. Real applause. Genuine. Earned. I smiled, remembering the woman who'd stood in this same room a year ago, holding divorce papers with trembling hands. She'd been humiliated, betrayed, publicly dismissed, but she hadn't been destroyed. She'd been awakened. And the woman standing here now, Catherine Hayes, Vice President of Strategic Investment, holding her glass high, leading a company she'd saved and rebuilt? She hadn't just survived humiliation. She'd turned it into ownership.